Hello. So, I'm going to get some uni work done today. I did have something else planned, but that'll have to wait till another time. You're probably wondering why this book is here. And that is because the project I'm currently doing for university focuses on children's illustration. And I happen to have this as part of a small collection of books I've kept on. So I'm going to recreate this illustration, and I've already got the sketch ready. So I can go straight into using the watercolours. Now I'm using watercolours because I'm trying to use the same materials that the illustrator from the Elmer book has used. First thing I need to do is give the background a wash, and I think I'm going to need the crimson colour for that. It's more of a pink wash, but with the colours I've got, it just means I need to apply a really light coat of crimson. And then we can start. So I'm deliberately going to paint over the pencil lines, because looking at the illustration in the book, it does look like the line art has been drawn on with pencil. Now I know I sometimes give little tips about my practice and how things are done, but I'm not going to be doing that with this, because if it's an art supply that requires a brush, I'm almost no good at it at all. I like gouache, and I'm getting better at watercolour. One of my art friends, they are really good with watercolour, and they did teach me enough to at least be confident enough for stuff like this. Trying not to make it obviously crimson. And by doing this wash, I'm avoiding our characters that was a bit too strong. So what this wash is going to do is it's going to make all the colours in the background have a slightly red tint, which helps unify the piece. And the characters not having this wash will stand out better. It's a technique that I've tried before, so I kind of know what I'm doing. Now if you ever do put too much of a colour on, you just only need to apply a bit more water to it. Or you can dry the brush and actually suck out the pigment, a bit like a vampire. The paper's starting to buckle now. This is why I've got the tape laid out. Normally you'd have to do something like stretch the paper, which you'd have to prepare, I think, like a day in advance. I remember that's what we used to have to do if we were doing any paintings with acrylic. Like if you haven't got canvas, which on our courses obviously it makes sense to just use paper, we would soak the paper with a sponge and then use tape, I think gum tape, which is also soaked in water, to stretch it out across a board. I nearly painted our crocodile. That was close. So that's the backdrop of the sky. Looking at the ground, it does carry on with that same tint. So I am going to have to apply it. I think it might be too dark in my piece. I ain't gonna go down that far. What I probably should have done was used some tape to make a border so that the edges would have had a nice clean finish. While it's in my head, I'll give a shout out to the awesome artist who's taught me what I know about watercolour. They're currently known on Instagram as Elli is an artist. Their work is fantastic. Like whatever art supply you use it's gonna turn out really good. And if you're an Undertale fan, then you'll really like their content. If not, then you at least get to appreciate the quality of their work. Just a little bit more to try and make it look a bit consistent. Right, so it has a little bit bled through into Elmer. But I don't think that's gonna be a big problem. Right, so we'll give them a couple minutes for that to dry. And then once that's done, I will carry on with the rest of the background. It makes sense to just get all of that done and then paint the characters. I'm not going to focus so much on shading with the watercolour because since I have to replicate David McKee's methods, what I actually have to do is get something like a pencil or some crayon and then use that to shade. The watercolours really just supply a base coat. That's it for Vermilion. Go back over the crimson. So once these crimson areas are coloured in, the sky should look much lighter in comparison, and more like a sky rather than just a big slab of colour. I'm noticing that the ends of these are a lot more pigmented. That should be okay. That's it for the crimson. What I'm going to do now is take some lemon yellow. I'm going to start applying that to any areas with yellow tint, because nothing in this seems to be purely yellow, at least not from what you're going to see in this illustration that I've done. So all these yellow areas, I'm gonna end up going over in a different colour. Just to help make it look warmer. Or golden. It depends on what colour I need to put on top. Very lightly there. Now those. Leaf green. I probably should wait for that to dry, but I think it's actually mixing better while it's still slightly wet. That colour is actually very close to what it should be. And I'm wondering how to go about the ground. I think an orange is wanted, but very faint amounts of it to start with. And if we afterwards add a yellow, oops. I went into his toesies. Now for the crown, to have its yellow coat. So the project that I'm doing is a research project, and early on into it you have to decide a specialism for illustration, and you focus on that. Research, for our first task we've had to research 8 artists in the field of whatever specialism you choose, which for me was children's publishing. And then you get to replicate or redo bits of an illustration from each of those 8 artists. So I've already done a Beatrix Potter illustration. I remember doing a Nick Sharratt one. He's the artist that created those iconic Jacqueline Wilson characters. Well, not. He created the visual designs for them. This might be a bit saturated. See if I can fix that later. And yeah, David McKee is one of the illustrators that I chose, because I don't think I've ever covered him in any projects before. And if we was to actually redo the illustrations, I've got like 3 of his books. I used to have a ton of the Elmer books, but I've only got the original one, the sequel, and then I think the 3rd book. Makes sense if it was the 3rd book. So now I'm just going to wash this bit of water, see if I can make it any lighter. Try and recreate that gradient that is in the book illustration. Yeah, Elmer is a children's book that I have had a soft spot for quite a while. Not to the extent that it has been my favourite, but it was one I was always happy to read. I was actually introduced to it through I think it was called Anytime Tales. It was a little cartoon that was a bit like Jack and Laurie. It did all these like children's books, and they adapted them for television. I discovered it on a VHS I had. It was like a compilation video that was made for a charity. and Elmer was donated by Anytime Sales for the video. So that was actually the animated version that I discovered Elmer through rather than the book. I think that'll do. Don't want to work it too much. Let's get some blue in for this plant here. And we'll do a green wash over that. I think one of the bristles just came off. Gotta be very careful if you have to end up touching the canvas or the paper, whichever you're using. Because obviously if you touch a wet spot, then you're going to pick up the paint. And you don't want to do that. No, no, no. And I see another hair has taken its place. See, that's what I was saying there, it's just smudge where I put my finger on it. I don't mind so much on there because I was trying to make it paler anyway. It doesn't look too noticeable. Just a wash of green. I think one of the biggest challenges actually is going to be painting Elmer. And he's not, in this illustration, he's not his normal colourful self that you probably recognise him for. If you've never read the Elmer stories, I'll just give you the exposition. He's basically gone and made a disguise for himself because he's fed up of being unique. And everyone thinks he's just an ordinary elephant at the moment. Don't want to make this too concentrated. The crocodile's going to be pretty vivid. Oh, spot on. Right, so that's the background just about finished. I've got to give a couple minutes so it dries, and then I can get Elmer and the crocodile painted. Right, I reckon it's dry enough to continue now, so I'm actually going to start painting Elmer. Now, yeah, elephants are grey, so why am I applying a light blue? The grey that we see Elmer's elephants in, it's not strictly zero saturation. there's always been this sort of faint blue tint to them. A bit more faint than this foot in the back, but there we go. So I've had to make this colour by putting some of my ultramarine into the white palette. And by doing that, they merge together to make this new colour. That's what white is usually used for in these watercolour sets. It's just like a little palette where you can mix and make your own colours. Usually ones that are lighter. So obviously once this is done, I can make the grey. This is probably what I should have done to make the really light sky background. And the same for the ground. I don't have to make any more of that colour. So I'm trying my best not to get any in the eye. Otherwise, at one point where it's just so brilliantly white is ruined. Make as much of that grey as we can, and on it goes. Could probably get away with a very light coat of black over this. But what I'll do is I'll still wash it with the white. And that way I don't go too dark. No, that's what I like. Let's try and keep it this shade of grey. See, I'm only going to film the watercolour process with you today and finish the rest at a later date when it's dried. What I have to do after this is not only use some crayon or pencil to shade with, but I'll then need to go over the pencil lines, something a little stronger. Right, I'm happy with that grey for Elmer. Clean up the white tray. in the crocodile. And actually get a start with yellow. Because I'm noticing, especially on the lower half of him, he has got a yellow tint. Where it ends up turning into a lighter green. Goes up the back of his tail. That was a bit sloppy there. Just go over the whole of him with that green. And we're going to get this darker hooker's green. Apply that. A coat of leaf green. We start mixing it all together. Right, well, since all I've got left with the watercolours is the inside of his mouth, I'm gonna wrap up filming, and if I get it done in time, I will also show you the finished illustration in this video. So here's the original illustration by David McKee, and here is my version. I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you next video.